Mike Tobin is in Lviv, Ukraine, with the latest there. Mike.
Well, a lot of this information is coming through reporting from the Times of London, particularly related to two of the assassination attempts. And this involves mercenaries with this shadowy group called the Wagner Group. And essentially, they're subcontractors who would have been working for the Russian government, providing the Russians with some deniability and some padding there. But they, according to the story, were pre-placed in Kiev and activated. But there were Russians who don't support the war, so they leaked information to the Ukrainian security services, and these two assassination plots were thwarted. The other involved a Chechen hit squad that were part of this Kadyrov's brigades, and the Kadyrov's brigades are the elite unit named after Ramzan Kadyrov, and they were inserted into the country when the fighting was so bad at the Hostomel airport there. They came in during the chaos, but once again, there were Russian turncoats who tipped off the Ukrainians, apparently with very detailed information, and the Ukrainians were able to locate the assassins and kill them right there at the airport. That information came through the national security chief out here in Ukraine. So real spy stuff going on out here, real cloak and dagger stuff playing out in real life.
So, Mike, we're obviously seeing that play out in Ukraine, but in Russia now, we're seeing Vladimir Putin shut down Facebook, a number of other social media companies, and there's this fear now of him invoking martial law. So we're actually seeing a number of Russians try to leave the country. So can you comment a little bit about the propaganda war on that end as well?
Well, as they say, the first casualty in war is the truth. There certainly is a lot of propaganda out here and a lot of bad information that comes out. When you start to see the casualty figures, you can't really trust any of them. You saw the numbers of the casualties that came out from the Ukrainians was dramatically different than what came out from the Russians. You get a lot of stories, and then you go to find video of the evidence or find something that will support these different stories that come out, and it's just not there. So when you're in an environment like this, you have to double check everything and hope that you don't get bamboozled in the process.
Tell us a little bit about this Wagner Group. I had no idea you could subcontract out a hit internationally and then wipe your hands clean and act like you had plausible deniability. Did Putin actually think he could pull the trigger on something like this and no one would think he was behind it?
Well, a lot of it goes back to that gentleman known as the Baker in Russian circles, and he was tight with Putin, primarily the chef, I should say, and he was tight with Putin because Putin liked the way he cooked, and he got folded into the inner circles there. So he does a lot of odd jobs, and he is tied with right down to that Internet Research Association, and he is tied into that Wagner Group. Of course, I can't provide you too much information because they're a shadowy organization. Their whole backbone of their organization is their secrecy.
That's fascinating. Thank you.
Judge, do you have a question for Mike?
Yeah, actually, I do, Mike. You know, we're talking about these assassination attempts on Zelenskyy. Have you heard anything about assassination attempts on Putin? I mean, even Putin's own people are leaking information to the Ukrainians. And, you know, now they're getting their social media shut down. They've got this statewide propaganda going on about, you know, how they're demilitarizing and denazifying Ukraine. Did you hear anything about that?
Well, I can tell you, it's very apparent that Putin is paranoid. If you look at the way he sits in all of the meetings he have, even with some of his closest advisors, you could have a bowling match set up between him and his closest advisors. He has to shout down the table, and that's because he's fearful of COVID. They know that if they get swabbed, that means that someone could get their DNA and custom design a poison that could just kill him. So there's a great deal of paranoia on Putin's part, but assassination plots, I imagine they keep that secret.
Yeah, I imagine they do.
Mike, I would tell people at home to look up Yevgeny Prigozhin because he's the chef that you talked about, and he has been very tight with Putin for a really long time. And he is believed to be overseeing some of these operations to kill Zelenskyy. And, you know, there were 42 plots, they think, probably more than that, to try to kill Hitler during World War II, and none of them succeeded until he killed himself in a bunker in Berlin. So Zelenskyy is obviously under so much daily pressure. What can you tell us about how he's sort of changing the way that he navigates? And I also read that that one of the ways they could do it is to drop like a laser pin on him to try to figure out, to try to stick something on him physically so that they can find him?
Well, that's really advanced. I don't have a whole lot about that. But as far as the pressure that Zelenskyy is under and what he's doing, you keep in mind, while you have the Russian leaders are paranoid and they won't sit next to their closest advisors, Zelenskyy is doing press conferences, and he is in the middle of all of this. And one thing that has happened out here, particularly in the West, he wasn't that popular and he wasn't that respected. This is a guy who was an actor who it fell into this job. And even his political party is named after the political party from the TV series he was in. And a lot of people just thought that he wasn't up to the task, and he has risen to the occasion. Not only so, the people who didn't like him in the western part of the country are now backing him. If you saw some of these scenes of this broadcast address he just did, the Wenceslas Square there in the Czech Republic is just packed with people who are now rallying behind Zelenskyy. So it's remarkable the extent to which this guy has risen to the occasion.
Greg?
Yeah, so I read, and I should have double-checked this, but I had read that Russia passed a new law imposing prison terms for spreading misinformation about the Russian military. And the depressing part about this is that there were no lawmakers or in their parliamentary chambers that opposed the bill. And if I'm coming from the point of view that the key here is you have to persuade powerful Russians, not just the population, but powerful Russians, that Putin is not destroying Ukraine, but destroying Russia, and they have to save it. But when you see lawmakers in these chambers not opposing this bill, that's kind of depressing, no?
Sure, and then now that it goes through, when you start to talk about misinformation in the press, well, the definition of fake news, as is popularly interpreted, is anything you don't want to hear. Right. So if a reporter puts out something the government doesn't like, it's you could be looking at prison time, and therefore you're going to have a controlled media. And I've been in these countries where the media is controlled, and usually the front page of the newspaper is just ridiculous. It's praising whoever is in power at the time. And then what you get is a mistrust with the people because they know what they're looking at on the front page and the newspaper is just entirely controlled.
All right, Mike Tobin, thank you so much. Stay safe.